Welcome to the Art of Winning. I'm Sterling Strother along with Dan Travis, and we are here on behalf of the Art of Winning Tennis.com. This is our membership website where we talk about how to win more, right? I mean, who doesn't want to win more? But I'm excited about today. We're gonna actually talk about why it's important to win. Why is it important to teach about winning and having a winning mindset? It's a lot more than just getting the glory, right? It's more about how do you negotiate winning and when you lose, right? So why don't we jump right in it and get started, Dan?
So over 2020, we've dramatically, I think, accelerated the Art of Winning program. And before, what was a mystery or beyond the explanation, look, we can now at least attempt to understand what is happening in a tennis match. I think that's a fair enough assessment of 2020 and the work we've done. Look, we're now beginning to close in on answering the question, why do players become frustrated during tennis matches? Is that your observation, Sterling?
When you're trying to win at anything, and especially winning a tennis match is no different, you're entering into the zone of competition. Okay, so what you'll need when you enter the zone of competition is competitive intelligence. And so competitive intelligence is the ability to make decisions based on reason instead of emotion. So it's the ability to distinguish between what is really happening with momentum instead of what you perceive is happening with momentum. And so understanding how momentum flows back and forth is how you learn to win. So I talk about a winning mindset more in my book, 7 On-Court Strategies. You can find that on Amazon or right here at the artofwinningtennis.com. Learning how to win is important because when you are entering the zone of competition, that's when tension is created in you and around you. Okay, so tension is needed to grow and mature. And without tension, motivation to become better is absent. It doesn't even exist. So, for example, I describe it like this: a journey through mountains and valleys. Most people may think that in the valley is where the tension or the struggle lives. Or at the same time, we know that tension really doesn't exist on the mountaintop. So where does it exist? Well, tension and struggle exist on the journey up and down the mountain, right? So between the valleys and the mountaintops is where the struggle lives. The struggle lives in the process of ascending and descending, right? So in a tennis match, in competition, it's the process of winning and losing points is where the tension lives and the struggle exists. So learning to negotiate, navigating, winning and losing points leads to having this winning mindset and then the ability to negotiate the tension by managing momentum and navigating your emotions. So this is what I believe is why players are frustrated and how they come out of their frustration is when they begin to understand that competition produces the tension and the struggle you need to actually grow and mature, not just as a tennis player, but as a person.
I think the whole of tennis culture now seems to be about avoiding competition, having fun, keeping fit, and being stuck in what you and I call the zone of participation. What does remain a very difficult question to me is how did this happen? How did people get stuck in the zone of participation? And how did we end up with a tennis culture that avoids competition? And I know that's a big question, Sterling. And I've tried to, I've been trying to answer that over the last decade. Can you attempt to answer that as well?
Well, it is quite an interesting question, and it can be sort of seem difficult to answer. Here's the way I look at it. I believe that as human beings, we're all trying to make our lives easier. So it's why the technology has increased at astronomical levels, right? The problem that, as I see it, is with avoiding competition, is you are avoiding the opportunity to face something head on and go through it. So competition is difficult because it creates the tension, like I said before, and the tension is both internal and external, right? An example of internal would be we want to win and we don't want to lose. So that expectation is tension. And an example of external is we perceive that our parents or our coaches or friends want or even need us to win, right? So tension is not created in the zone of participation. Participation is taking part in something or sharing in something. And judgment typically does not exist with participation at the level that it exists in competition. So if you are participating in something and you fail, the perception is you tried and it's okay to fail or even lose, because forgiveness within yourself and even around you is there bountifully, right? But competition, judgment is fierce and it can be unrelenting. It's harsh. And if you win, you're good. And if you lose, you're bad. And that's judgment at its core. So we can say that the intensity of judgment or the lack thereof in the zone of participation would really be the main reason to promote it more than competition, right? It's hard to deal with rejection as a result of losing. Yet the only way you can truly mature as a person and learn how to negotiate winning and losing is to experience the zone of competition. And so that's where my head has lived, that trying to decipher what are the real differences between the zone of competition and the zone of participation. And this is what I've been able to sort of come up with in as a concise way as possible, right? So this is what I feel like it is the beginning of understanding the differences between the two zones and why you want to really strive for that zone of competition as much as possible.
That's a very, very interesting take on that, Sterling. And I think that's very illuminating. Particularly because I hadn't thought about it in that way before. I think certainly over 2021, we're going to be coming back to this repeatedly, and with more knowledge and understanding of what's happening here. And really, can we get people out of the zone of participation? Can we save them from the graveyard that is the zone of participation? Well, it's a graveyard, not in a real sense, but I mean,
it can keep you from growing for sure. Yeah.
Okay, I believe that. Look, different countries have different approaches to this culturally. I think it's in tennis, it's a different thing, but that is a huge trend, and again, something that we are really trying to address at the Art of Winning. So my question then, Sterling, moving on, and sorry, forgive me, but this is quite a long one. We seem to have got ourselves into a rather strange position. A central pillar to this zone of participation that we're talking about seems to be that a strong technical base needs to be achieved with our players. So endless repetition, and the more the better is the kind of ethos in the zone of participation to improve technique. But players seem to remain in this zone of repetition or participation forever. Match play, also known as playing matches, we use that term as match play as opposed to anything else. Match play seems to be tagged on after the player has reached this like technical Xanadu, right? So it's always like, oh, we're just, and then we might play some points at the end. Always tagged on. It's always ad hoc. We'll end up with a situation where the technical zone of participation that's all a player experiences. And what have you found to be the consequence of staying in the zone of participation?
This is a very interesting one for me because I grew up in the 80s. As a kid, it was in the 80s, right? So when we played sport, and I played 6 sports growing up, half of them, well, most of them were team sports. And I played tennis and golf. But we actually learned to play the sport by competing. And the technical skills evolved through that sort of mechanism, that environment of competition, right? I mean, when you have, a football team, junior football team, little league football, little league basketball, we didn't have a lot of time to practice. I mean, we practiced a couple times a week, and then on the weekends we had our competition between us and other teams. And so, you're practicing anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a week, and then you're going to go play an hour and 15-minute sort of match or game. I mean, there wasn't any time to focus on the technique of how we were doing it. It was more like, okay, here are the plays. Here we're going to run these plays, and people that came in that worked on their game on their own. Like for me in basketball, like I would go out and shoot on my own, and I would play. We would play pickup ball, but when we would play with our friends, like pickup ball, we actually played games and scored. Right? We didn't sit around and work on our technique with each other. We maybe worked on our technique individually, maybe shot free throws or whatever, or maybe jump shots. But this was very interesting. So when I look at today and I look at the zone of repetition, right, or the zone of participation, let's just talk about the zone of repetition, for instance. Staying in this zone provokes, and I use that word, provoke.
And you use it brilliantly. I love that.
Intentionally. It provokes an attitude of perfectionism. And perfectionism is what paralyzes a player from improving their winning point play or match play percentage.
Because you're there forever.
You're just stuck. It's like you get stuck in quicksand. It's like quicksand, right? Now, if you understand the true definition of perfect, it actually means mature. But what most people have come to believe is that perfect means to be without error.
Yeah.
And we know that no matter how much you practice your strokes and try to perfect them, errors will occur in competitive play. Okay, so if I'm perfecting a stroke, why am I still making errors in competitive play? Okay, the main reason is the tension that competitive play produces internally and externally, right? Is not how practices are. It's not how you practice, right? Most practice is repetitious and not competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, 99% of repetition drills lack an atmosphere. I use that word. Atmosphere of the competitive tension that you experience in point play. And the reason is repetition is done with an idea of being consistent and perfecting a stroke in a certain way without error. And the reason you feel so good when you repeat something over and over again is because the tension of winning and losing with that stroke is typically absent when you're attempting to perfect it. And so it makes us feel good inside. The endorphins begin to race when we're doing something over and over, right? But remember, how are we doing that? Well, it's usually in a very controlled environment, right?
Yeah.
But the zone of participation makes you feel good. And yet the zone of participation fails to set in motion the type of competitive tension needed to know how to win a point and therefore avoid losing a point. So I go back to the early days of me growing up as a young adolescent, or as an adolescent and young teenager, is that we learn to compete without the focus and overemphasis of technique. And what was really interesting is that our technique began to evolve in a very powerful way, and actually pretty quick way, because our focus was not on the actual mechanics of doing it. We were actually just trying to achieve a goal. And the mechanics of it began to kind of flow. And we began to find ourselves becoming more coordinated and more, we had better agility, right, in doing this sport, because our mindset was on trying to win and avoid trying to lose, right? So we would make decisions based on that instead of making decisions based on our fixation of the technical part of what we are trying to accomplish, right? Now, I'm not dismissing technique there. I'm just trying to put technique in its proper context.
Yeah.
So we'll go on. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but let's move on.
But do you think that that's true for players as well as coaches?
Okay, so I actually took this question and I want to talk about coaches, right? Because I think here's the difference between what I just discussed and what I've just said so far is really from a player's perspective. So for coaches, we are looking for improvement in our players. And if we are looking for technical improvement, that is a subjective judgment call. Okay, it's subjective. It's based on opinion. Personally, I'm more interested in whether a stroke helps a player win more points. Now, there is a connection between technique that is structurally sound and winning more over time.
Mm.
But there's also a connection between a player's confidence in their technique and winning. So, or winning more. So if a player feels like they can win with the technique they have, they will play shots and stay within their skill set to avoid errors and win more points. The classic example of this type of player in the tennis world, and you know this, is the pusher. The pusher will stay in their skill set, and they believe that they can win with the technique they have. And we see, especially in the juniors, we see people that just kind of push the ball back, beat those that are trying to perfect these skill set, these structurally sound, But and over time, obviously, the more structurally sound your technique, you're going to be able to overcome someone who more pushes the ball back. Maybe, right? Depends on how that pusher develops too. But coaches tend to overemphasize, and I am totally guilty of this in the past years. We overemphasize good technique, right? Subjective, at certain developmental stages. The question for me becomes, what level does the player want to play at? And does better technique help them get there faster? Here's what I'd say, that through my experiences over the last 10 years, a player that can focus more on the tactical application of their shots, two things happen quicker. First, they begin to win more points. their confidence rises,
Yes.
and their technique, and they win it with the technique they have because their focus shifts from their stroke production to playing a certain pattern to win the point. And the second thing is, as a result of a tactical mindset here, certain parts of their technique improve because of their shift in focus. Because this is a very mental and emotional thing we're talking about here. Whatever you focus on, that's what you feel. And so when you're focused so hard on the technical stroke production while you're trying to win, your focus is taken away from the tactical part of how to win, right? So where do I hit this ball, and when do I hit this ball? You're distracted by the technical mindset, and it keeps you from entering into the tactical mindset, right? These two things are married together, the technical. I mean, they're bonded together, right? But we have to understand, where should our focus be when we're actually competing? And when we're in practice, how do we simulate and rehearse that mindset? That's what we're here all about at the Art of Winning, is how do we understand how the practice court affects how the match court, and vice versa. How does the match court affect how we practice and how we transform our practice?
So you think that then, as we come to negotiate what happens on and understand what is happening, it's frustration, but I'd say emotion seems to subside in the player, and almost like reason and judgment take over. There seems to be a cause of frustration, though, in tennis players. Okay, people seem to think that frustration just spontaneously arises, or it's because of something or other. But I think you and I, from what we've looked at in depth in 2020, that this emotional response, and normally it's it's one of frustration in tennis players, has a cause. So we've been working very hard on what that cause may be. What have you found in 2020 that can help answer the question, what is the cause of frustration?
I think the major cause of frustration is not knowing what to do and when to do it. For example, playing shots in sequence with pre-planned patterns is the answer to this frustration. I think that's the number one thing I found in 2020.
So given that, then, is there a difference between knowing what is going on in a match and knowing what to do about it?
Yes, knowing what's going on comes from perception. How a player perceives a situation determines how they address it. So knowing what to do in that moment is determined by what you perceive is happening in that moment.
Okay. So
let me give you an example.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, Sterling. Yeah.
It's okay. If you don't know that every game is won or lost by a margin of 2 points in a row, your perception of how to win a game is distorted, because you're thinking you must win more than 2 points in a row in every game to win it.
Or is it more accurate to say
it's simply not true there?
Yeah, but I get you. But isn't it more accurate to say that we can't perceive that small difference in a match. You can't pick up. You need a system to. You need a system to. It's like detection. Yeah, you need to detect this momentum.
Yeah, that's the perception problem that we've been really diving into and trying to understand. Why don't players perceive that it's a very small margin?
The question for them would be so. And I'll be fascinated to hear what you've got to say about this. Now, tell the truth, Sterling, on this one. I know you always do, but we have to be very careful. Can you know what to do if you don't know what's going on in a tennis match?
It's extremely difficult to know what to do if you don't perceive what's going on in a tennis match. You may swerve into the right decisions every now and then, but trusting that I'm going to swerve into it to happen in every match you play is unrealistic.
That's fair enough. Yeah. Because we get that a lot, don't we? Well, how did
I escape that one?
Some players are closer to it without knowing what's happening.
Right.
There is an instinct, but even those players improve dramatically once they become conscious.
It's very interesting you said the word instinct, because we say, well, they instinctually knew how to win that. It was because of their instinct.
Did I use the word?
And then we leave it at that.
Yeah.
Like it's like a gift.
Yes.
Instead of asking that player, how did they perceive where they were in the match? And then how did they just make decisions based on what they perceived? Right? Instead of just leaning on, it was instinct, you got to be more instinctual. It's almost like we kind of throw it out there, like, be more instinctual, but we don't tell players how to do it. And you can actually teach someone to have better instincts, because instincts come from perception.
But I like the term cultivation or cultivating.
Sure. But it comes through experience and perception.
Yeah. But that's the tragedy of being the zone of participation, is that if you can't cultivate if you ain't in the garden.
Right. Yes, because you're not in the atmosphere that allows it to cultivate.
Yeah.
The zone of participation is not an atmosphere to cultivate perception, instinct, and to distinguish the difference between what is real and what is false.
Yeah.
Right. And what is blown up in our mind and what shouldn't be.
So when Craig O'Shaughnessy wrote on Monday of this week about the reign of the top three, he was looking at why they were great in particular, and I found it a very interesting piece. Essentially, it was a description from his point of view, not necessarily an explanation, which I think is more where we're at the art of winning. And then we take that onto the practice court. But what he says is very interesting. So what does Craig's description of the top three tell us about what is happening in a match?
That article was well done. And you're right, it was a description. And so the winning and losing happens by small margins.
Yes.
Not big ones. If you can win just above 50% of the points you play, you have a great chance of winning a lot. That's hard to wrap your head around.
Wow.
Because of our perception of what it takes to win. We think it takes we need to win 70% of the points we play.
And we act like that on the tennis court.
Yeah. We need to win the majority of the points we play. And that's our expectation going in. And so when we don't do that, our expectation is shattered. And that's what
what do we blame, Sterling?
Oh,
what does one blame? Yeah.
Well, most people go right to their technique. They blame right that's the thing they blame.
Happening on the court though. Start rehearsing or replaying the shot again. So how does the human mind experience this 53% versus 47%? But how do they perceive that very small quantity, that very small number percentage difference during a match? What actually happens, Sterling?
All right, most believe that this is actually a small difference, but it's really a huge difference between winning a lot and winning a little. Right? 53-47, we're thinking that's a small difference. No, it's not. It's huge, right? Okay, so let's just look at the 3 best players that we know of right now, and they're all playing at the same time, right? Let's start with Rafael Nadal. This was in Craig's article. So we're giving props to Craig, right? So in Rafa's career, he's played 176,360 points, and he's won 96,208 for an overall point win percentage of 54.55%. So 54.5% of the points he's won.
Yeah.
Okay. Novak Djokovic, 54.4. A tenth of a percentage less. Roger Federer, 54.17. I mean, Roger's numbers are he's played 233,608 points and won 126,548. Right, so he's played a lot more points than Rafa, but his win percentage is basically they're all at 54%, and then a few tenths of percentage difference. Right. These are the best players that we've probably ever seen that have won millions of dollars, and they've only won 54% of the points they played. This is the perception and the reality discussion that we just talk about a lot, is you only have to win just over 50% of the points, and you can win a lot. Okay, and that's where that sort of statement comes. If you win 55% of the points, you can win 99.5% of the time, or something crazy, right? Because these players are winning 54% of the points they play, and they're winning a lot. There's a lot of grand slams between these 3, right? Yeah. And there's a lot of money that's been won. So they're only winning a fraction over 50% of the points. What does that tell us about us, mere mortals who play the game? These are tennis gods. We're mere mortals, okay? So we need to strive in our point play to win just a bit more than 50% of our points. Well, if we break that down, that breaks down to most games are won by a margin of 2 points in a row. Once you realize that, you've taken the most important step to improve your match winning percentage tremendously.
Yeah, it's interesting that given let's say in an average 2-3 set match, you're playing about 130 points. That 54%, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So at 130, that's going to account for or add up to 54% is going to be it's going to come down to about 5 or 6 points.
Yep.
Yeah, that percentage difference.
Yeah, I mean, you're only talking winning about 70 points out of 130. Yeah. 70 out of 130 points, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at
that's 10. That's 10 points then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you argue that knowing that where those 10 points will occur is critical?
Yeah. Well, let's take this. If you play a match and you play 200 points, if you win 54% of the points, that's 108 points. You've won 8 more points than your opponent. Now, obviously, where you win those 8 points is important. But what's even more important to realize is what are the bricks that you had to lay back to back? What are the points you had to go back to back to get to that point where you won 8 more points than your opponent?
Yeah.
That's the important part, because we'll tend to dismiss or put less.
Well, I think there's a connection issue, Sterling.
Yeah, there's a connection between those winning points multiple times in a row.
But that can be taught, right? So you can be taught to gain that edge of 10 points.
Yes.
But it requires the intervention of knowledge, really. You have to know what is happening in order to gain, and you have to prioritize.
Yeah.
Don't you? You have to prioritize what you are going to do about the flowing momentum of this match. So if you're 2 points up, you need to know what to do when you are 2 points up.
Correct.
In the scenario and situation you're in.
Correct.
That will increase your win rate, regardless of of the technical or how you're feeling at that moment. In other words, you need a system.
Yep.
Because the emotional or the mindset will not carry you through the match.
No, because you're going to get tired.
That is there, that operates in the same way every match. Because you get people to, you've got to try against this opponent, you've got to try something different. You've got to, these conversations, try and do this on this occasion. Yeah. But what I think separates the art of winning player and the art of winning coach is the system. You can go and sit in a corner and feel, I'm brilliant. I'm in a great mood today. I'm feeling very positive. Great. Fantastic. That will not win you the match. It's the system. Am I right, or am I being too cold, Sterling?
Well, I would say that, look at Djokovic's play the last year and a half, 2 years versus his previous 3 years, or almost 3 years, where he had Craig O'Shaughnessy as a strategy coach. There's a big difference in how he performed and what his win percentage was when Craig was with him. And Craig, he instituted a lot of these things that we talk about every day, maybe with a little bit different twist to it, but it's basically still the same type of mindset. So I would say that, the main features of the art of winning is built around the understanding of point rally length of points, right? The rally length of points, or the average rally length of points, the momentum scoring system that we develop, and 2-shot sequencing of your patterns of play, right? Which is something that it's different than maybe what someone like Craig will talk about. We're very keen on 2-shot sequencing because it lines up with the data very precisely, and it helps you sort of overcome those data averages, if you will, or at least negotiate inside of those data averages, right? I mean, so look, 6 out of 10 points are going to end 0-4. How are you going to deal with that? Are you going to be able to win 52% of those points? Because that's going to be the key, right? If 6 out of 10 points, can you win 3.5 of those points? Right? Can you win 54% of the 0-4 shot rally lane? If you can, you're going to win the match. It's how Nadal beat Djokovic at the French Open this year. Nadal won more. He won like 50% of the 0-4 shot rally lane, and Djokovic only won like 28% in that rally lane. And the majority of the points fell in 0-4. So whoever won the majority of those typically wins the match, right? Now we can say that maybe a break point was on 5-8 or whatever, and then those need to be competitive as well. I'm not dismissing those rally length, but I'm just saying you got to begin the point well, and you've got to win a lot of those points. You got to be in the position to win those points.
So can you explain the main features of the structure that we've created at the Art of Winning that allows the player to understand how a match works?
Yeah, sure. Well, we've created momentum games that you can play that thrust you into the zone of competition. They help you navigate the tension and pressure you're feeling with the momentum scoring system,
Yeah.
right? The momentum scoring system helps you navigate the tension and pressure that you feel when you're playing these points, and you're rehearsing two-shot patterns of play in the process. So these three things coming together start to change a player's mindset. They become more of a how do I win mindset, and how do I, at the same time, I'm avoiding some errors that I would.
And it's interesting to me, because we're talking about the art of winning system that we've created. I've been involved in a lot of other programs in creating systems, some of them from scratch, and they become more complicated.
Ours is different in the fact that it actually becomes more simple.
Yeah.
And it's very it stretches and flexes.
Yeah.
Like you can take it as a coach and you can flex it and stretch it and you can create within it. It's not so rigid, right? Like some systems have a very rigid, monolithic tone to them.
I'd argue that with the art of winning, the simplicity and the clarity increases the more you become involved, right? There are more dimensions, but because it's knowledge based.
Yes.
Not simply a stream of information.
Yeah.
Or prescription and so on. Because we're building in knowledge and understanding simultaneously.
Yeah, it's even though the art of winning system, if you break it down, it's simple-minded, but it's not. It doesn't lack depth. See, there's a difference in having something that's wide and a lot of breadth to it, and something that's simple and deep, right?
Yeah.
And the art of winning system is simple and deep. It goes deep, and you start to unravel things as you go through these simple processes of keeping the momentum score. Just that simple process of counting begins to unveil the depth of the emotional and mental conditions that are there, and then you begin to ask the questions, well, how do I negotiate that now?
So how do we put this into practice on the tennis court?
Well, like I said, the best way is we create momentum games, which are games that are based on momentum scoring and based on point rally length and the different sections of the point rally, and then the two-shot sequencing. So we've got to develop games and even maybe challenges and drills that incorporate these ideas of understanding how momentum flows back and forth between players.
Okay. So here's two questions for 2021. So what are the new innovations that the Art of Winning are investigating and delivering in 2021?
So one of the main things we're working on now, and this is gonna really expand in 2021, is winning and losing point probability based on the mental and emotional interpretation of where a player thinks, or even more importantly, believes that they are in a game. Like, where do they believe they are in the game based on how many points have they won or lost, right? And how does that all fit together? We're investigating how players think and believe the way they do about winning points and games, right? We're going to be creating games, and we're in the process of this now, that expose these beliefs and expose the mindsets of players so that we as coaches can help them develop the tools they need to negotiate the pressure of winning. Because there is a pressure that is associated with winning, and there's a pressure that is associated with losing. And it's not necessarily the same nuance of pressure. There's a little bit different. It fluctuates. So that's what we're doing. We're exposing the beliefs and mindsets of players through developing these games. These games are what exposes it and brings it out. And then you're able to actually you're able to answer the question by asking a question instead of just giving an answer, right? This is the art of helping your players discover their game and discover what they do the best and discover what is frustrating their opponent the most is answer a question by asking a question.
So what are you looking forward to most then in 2021? I've got my list.
So I think one of the main things that I'm looking forward to it is I'm actually looking forward to traveling around and meeting all the players and coaches that we've helped the past few years and really inspire them in person to coach and play in ways that actually exceed their expectations.
Yeah.
Well, I think first you've got to talk to people about what their expectations are. And then once you discover what their expectations are, you can begin to address that. So I think that I'm looking forward to asking players and coaches what do they expect, and then helping them navigate their expectations in the way are you perceiving your expectations in the best way possible, right? Are you expecting something to happen that's probably not going to happen based on other variables, right? And then the time expectation of things happening, right? We want it quick, right? But there's a level of experiences that as a coach and a player you have to go through, and those are there's some similarities there, but they are different, right? Like I experience growth as a coach differently than a player experienced growth as a player, right? So I experience winning and my players winning in a different way than my players actually winning themselves.
But by engaging with the Art of Winning's work and joining the website, becoming a member, and so on, and joining the masterclasses, you know the effect will be instant.
Yes.
You will hit the ground running from day one, from any podcast you listen to, and start putting the system into place. You will begin to, it will transform it from day one. But what you're saying is that that's an ongoing process, and it builds.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
This is what we should be focusing on as coaches and players. It's that kind of improvement that we need to expand, and developing competitive intelligence as coaches and players. That's the process that we want to start, and it does start as soon as you join the Art of Winning system. Okay, we're not looking. We're not looking at 5 years on before the penny drops here.
That's the beauty of the Art of Winning system is that it starts you right off getting immediate results.
Yeah.
Because it's based on simple concepts, and then those have a lot of depth to them as you continue to do them. It reveals the depth, right? It's like walking into a house and a beautiful house, and you walk in and you get this first initial burst of like, oh man, this is amazing. And you haven't even stepped into any of the rooms or gone upstairs, right? So that's like the Art of Winning. When you first come in, you're going to experience a burst of just success and just because of the revelation that we initiate you into this sort of revelation and revolution of how to perceive the information.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So yeah. So
I know this is what we're doing. It's like being in a laboratory. It's like exploring this stuff day in, day out.
Right. It's exciting and fun too.
Between what we've done this year is, this is daily.
Yep. Yep. So again, definitely check out the artofwinningtennis.com. and get that 7-day trial membership. You have access to all the portals immediately. and you can go on. You can send us a message through the website. It's Sterling at theartofwinningtennis.com or Dan
Yep.
at artofwinningtennis.com. You can send us an email message. You can find us on all the social media platforms. Sterling Strother at my Instagram. We got Art of Winning Instagram. We also have the Facebook page that you're involved in now. If you're watching this on the Facebook page, we have a community there. You can go and ask to be invited. And we do the video cast, put it up there. And they're also in the Art of Winning in certain portals. We'll place them in whatever portal. So yeah, so check it out, artofwinningtennis.com. Welcome 2021. Bye-bye 2020. We're just going to move on, keep our head down, and keep exploring the new innovations coming at the Art of Winning.